Hi everyone and welcome back to part 3 of the restoration process of my BMW E39. In part 1 we removed the rear axle and we dismantled all the components from the subframe. In part 2 we restored everything we could, and in this part we're going to start the reassembly process. If you want to see how I do this, stick around and I'll show you how. We're going to continue with the installation of the subframe bushes. We're going to be using Febi parts. As you've seen in most of my videos, I use predominantly Febi parts. This is the part number, they're all the same. You're gonna need 4 of these. These are, by the way, oil-filled bushes. So if you have failed MOT and there's any leaks, they're coming from the top of the bushes. This part here, just opposite this arrow, it's full of oil. So do not be tempted to poke with any sharp objects, because it will pierce it and that'll be a failure. So let's go install one of these. I've already done one off camera. Let me show you what I'm going to be using here in order to install the bush. So before I show you the tools, I just want to mention there's a lot of debates online as to what lubricant to put on these bushes. Some people say apply lubricant on the inside of the subframe. Some people say apply lubricant just on the bush. I read the BMW manual, and the BMW manual specifies a specific product which I can't find. So it has to be something that is not going to damage the rubber long term. So I'm not going to apply anything on the inside of this bush housing, but I will apply some Vaseline. And this is the Vaseline you buy from your pharmacy. This is for humans. So if it's good enough for my skin, it's going to be good enough for this rubber bush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it on the bush. Okay, get the edges as well. And now, very important part, you want to install this bush. So this subframe is upside down. If your subframe was the correct way, the right side up is going to be on the bottom of your subframe, but because I flipped it upside down to make it easier to install these and show you, I'm going to install these bushes this way. Okay, now the easiest way I can describe this to you is you're never going to get it perfect, but what you're aiming for is that these cutouts here, these notches, face left and right, and this is going to face forward and this is going to face backward. It doesn't really matter if this is forward or backward, you can flip them the other way as long as these cuts in the bush face left and right of the vehicle. Imagine this is your left wheel, this is your right wheel, this is the rear of the vehicle, and this is the front. So this is the way you want to install these in place. So we've done obviously one off camera already, and then we're going to continue with this one here. Now I will show you the tool. I have one of these bush installation tools. Then you can get this as a universal kit. Unfortunately, the universal kit doesn't come with a large enough plate to grab this bush on the top and apply equal pressure on the whole bush. And I don't want to center just here in the middle, because I don't want to put too much pressure on the inside of this bush. I think I've said the word bush probably 100 times, but you know what I mean. And this is 100mm steel plate, 6mm thick plate. And what I will be using is this threaded rod with axial bearing. And I will place it like that. Hopefully you're seeing this okay on the camera. Now insert this through the bush. And then in the next step, I will simply be using another plate. This is 90mm diameter. I've bored it so I can put it through the tool. What I will do is I will insert the bush until it hits this plate, and then I will take everything off and install this pipe. So this is 80mm internal diameter. The pipe was, I think, 78mm internal diameter. This is thick wall pipe. So what I did is I cut this so I can open it up and widen it to 81 millimeters, which is perfect. So I'm going to use this at the end because I want to have it nice and flush and centered properly. Make sure the bush is the right orientation. So these cuts face left and right. And with a 27 millimeter spanner on both top and bottom, we're going to start ratcheting and inserting this in. Okay, I've loosened up and allowed some more thread. And what I will do now is I'm going to put my extender. I've placed my extension pipe here. So this is how you install a subframe bush on a BMW E39. You could probably apply this to other models as well. This part should be flush and you will have a little bit protruding from the bottom, which is why we got this extension. And exactly the same on the other side. So this is going to be obviously at the bottom. This is upside down at the moment. We're going to do the same on this one and the other one over there. This is it, all 4 bushes have been installed in place. That's the correct orientation for them. So we're going to flip this subframe now upside down. And we're going to continue with the assembly of the rest of the components. I'm going to install the freshly refurbished differential. We're going to attach this in place and then start bolting on suspension arms. I want to show you, I've done the brake lines. I haven't finished them, I haven't done the ends, but I've basically rerouted them here underneath the subframe. Maybe some finishing up works, but this looks much different than the way it was when we first started. So hope you appreciate this. We kept the contrast between the black tanks and the grey stone chip. I installed stainless steel bolts, marine grade, so everything should last the lifetime of this vehicle. So let's continue on with the next steps. I'm going to show you the torque specs for this specific model. There's 2 different torque settings for the flex disc to the flange and the disc to the transmission. It all depends obviously what grade bolts you have. You've got 8.8, 10.9, the old ones are 10.9 and 8.8. So I'm not really sure if this is the way it came from the factory, with 2 different grade bolts on the same flex disc, but I will take you through this brand new kit from Febi. The part number is 43472, and first let's start with the information here and the instruction leaflet which is actually something that you should take a look when it comes to these flex discs, because this is what the previous person didn't follow, and that just shows you in figure 2, the pointy bit, the arrow, the red arrow points towards the flange, and this is what they actually didn't do here. So this points the wrong way. Whenever I put the camera on the stand, I'm going to show you how extremely badly cracked this flex disc is. It's probably one of the worst ones I've seen. In the Febi kit, we've got the flex disc itself, which is identical, and let me show you the good news. So just in case you have any doubts about Febi, this here is made in Germany, which is almost impossible to see nowadays, even from Ledforder and Zax, TRW, really top manufacturers. Everything is made in China. Now, Febi, well done for this. You get thumbs up from me. Now, Febi supply you a bag of bolts, and all these bolts are 10.9. Yeah, so it's great that you're going to work with the same grade bolts, unlike what I find here. But again, I'm not 100% sure if these are factory. The torque spec for the bolts to the flange and Guibo is 90 Newton meters, and the Guibo to the transmission is 100 Newton meters, and that is if all your bolts are 10.9. Now let's take this last bolt. I want you to see what we are talking about here. Hopefully this will focus properly. So this is just giving you an idea. Now it is splitting from the metal parts here as well, and it's cracked all over. That's pretty bad here. It's cracked at this point. Now, how to install this? So see the way the arrow is pointing forward? This is the pointy bit. You want to turn it this way, so the pointy bit points at the flange here, okay? Let's install the bolts. Some of these bolts come with washer. These are 18mm bolts and nuts. So I'm going to hold the bolt head and torque the nut. If you're torquing on the bolt head, you're probably going to have to apply a bit more torque. And that's how you torque the Guibo to the prop shaft. Just before I forget, what you want to do is you want to pack this CV joint here full of grease, and please be sure to use the correct grease. This is CV grease for CV joints. Don't just use any type of grease, use the correct one. Just a quick update on these heat shields. These have been power washed with degreaser, and then completely resprayed with the correct high grade paint. This is high resistant zinc paint, and I didn't show you the process of respraying because it's just boring, just cleaning them and spraying them, but I have restored them. And also what I have here is this great repair kit. You can see I went for the bigger kit. I think there are about 50 of these discs, and that's basically what you want to do in these cases where the hole has corroded so much that you can't actually put the standard screw there. Same as this here. This is obviously going to be a problem, so what I've done is I've got these which that will cover, and then you can bend it. They're rigid enough, but they're soft enough that you can bend, and as you can see it's made of the same material, so you can salvage these parts. Otherwise one of these is probably a couple £100, and some of them are not available. So you see, ideal application, something like that will just fit in perfect. Same as that there, and especially this one here. That's a really good example. See how wide that is? That'll just catch it and it'll properly fix that in place. I've replaced the screws that were on the chassis with stainless. I repaired that with stainless, plates and screws. So again, there's another good example there. This is quite a big one and just perfect fit. So great kit. I'm not making money on these. I might put it in the description for anyone who wants to buy one of these. They're available on eBay, AliExpress, anywhere you fancy. So just a good idea for repairing and reusing these old heat shields. Yep, I've resprayed these as I was showing you. So you can see how easily this could be bent in place. And these are the clips that are supplied with it. This is going absolutely nowhere. Let's torque the bolts. This front bolt takes 165 Newton meters. The rear bolts are M12. They take 100 plus 90 degrees. These are the old bolts. I'm not installing new bolts, so I'm not going to stretch them. I'm simply going to torque them to 100 Newton meters because they're already stretched. And this one here is M14. So as I said, 165. Let's go ahead and tighten this. I'm going to install the bushes on the stabilizing shaft, or the stabilizer, or the stabilizing arm as some people call it. The part number for this mount is 44257, and that's what they look like. They're split, so you can install it on the stabilizer. I've already done one off camera. And I can see I've refurbished this this stabilizer. I can see the marks from the previous one, so I'm just going to install it like that in place, and this bracket goes up like that. Okay, I'm going to leave this here. This inserts in these cuts here, and then you attach them with bolts. I'm going to continue with the installation of the hub on the bearing. So I just want to show you before I install the first one. This is the actual bearing. This is the rear bearing. This is the ring here for the ABS sensor. So just be careful. It comes with a little cover, so be careful not to damage this. And you want to insert the hub this way. As you can see, the way I've positioned it here. You've got a bag of hardware for attaching to the actual subframe carrier. And I'm going to show you this here as well. So this is the actual hub that we see here in place, and a nice surprise. Nice to see this. It's made in Germany. So let me show you. The part number is 32803. I'm going to take it out of its packaging. So excellent quality from Febi as usual, and it's good to see that Febi are making parts in Germany. I'm gently gonna pump this up and install this in the bearing. You can do this from time to time just to make sure that nothing's catching, but I've installed the bush exactly on the metal insert, so I'm not putting any pressure on the bearing itself. So that's how easy it is to install a hub in the bearing when you have all the parts, of course. I'm gonna place this here to protect it, and then I'm gonna go ahead and install the second one. I'm gonna be installing the ball joint and the integral link with the bolts and everything in place on this hub. We're also going to install the bearing. I've already pressed the actual hub on the bearing, but I want to talk to you through this kit here. So this is a Febi kit, and the part number is 34687. So this includes all these three components here. It includes the ball joint with the clip. It also includes the integral link. So if you want to buy the integral link separately, this is the part number 12299, but this comes all together in this box. So what you also get is this large bolt, and the part number, if you want to buy this separately from Febi, is 34691. I will bring you closer so you can see this, and yeah, it's well protected. You can see the threads are protected, and you got two bolts in this kit, all as part of 34687. Now we're going to obviously do both sides, so I've got two boxes. The first thing I'm going to install is this ball joint here, and what you will need to do is you're going to need to get installation tool, or Bosch's I have a universal kit, so you want to make sure that you can basically cover both of these. I'll show you exactly what way we're going to put them in place. One at the back, one at the front. Let me turn this way so you can see it a little bit better. And this is obviously going to be pushing against here to press it in place, and then we're going to need something to accept it at the back. So hopefully you're seeing this clearly. And then obviously we're going to install the clip, and in order to drive it you're going to need these other parts with the threaded rod. So let's start the smaller one. I'm going to add another one to extend this so it's not hitting the hub. Now let's not forget to install the clip at the back here. And that's how you install a ball joint on a E39. This is touring, but it's going to be exact same process on a saloon as well, or a sedan as you call it in Europe. And we're going to do this again on the other side, and I'll come back and we're going to install the rest of the components. I've installed the second one. Now let's install the clip in place, and this is easy. You can do this with your fingertips. You don't need any special tool. This clips in place, and that's the two ball joints installed in place. Now we're going to proceed with the rest of the procedure, and we will install the links, integral links, the bolts. I'm also going to bolt these brand new hubs and bearings. And we also have to consider installing these shields at the right time, because you don't want to make a mistake and not put them in and then forget about them, and then you have to disassemble the whole hub and do it again. So let's do this in the next step. This is a 16mm bolt. This is water-based rust converter. So we're gonna paint these bolt heads. I'm gonna install upgraded stainless steel marine grade bolts. I doubt this will ever have to be removed, but just in case. And you wanna install these bolts in place by hand because you don't want to cross thread them with the tool. The torque for these bolts is 10 Newton meters, but I'm just going to apply it by hand. In the next step, we're going to install these bearings. We've got a brand new bolt kit, and again I advise you to start these by hand. Don't use any power tools, they're very fine thread and they will cross thread if you use a power tool. So once you start them by hand, then you can use, this is E16 in my case, internal torque socket. Again, do it by hand. Don't be tempted to use any power tools at this point. Once you have fully threaded them, then you can use a power tool, but I prefer to do everything as much as I can by hand, by feel. Make sure you double check that everything is lined up correctly. There's no way obviously you can get this wrong, but just double check that everything is in its place. And we're going to flip this upside down again and apply final torque on these internal bolts here. Okay, let's torque it to 77 Newton meters. And if you're probably wondering how you're going to hold this in place because this is going to move left and right, I've got a tool for this as well. I'm going to show you how to install this integral link in place. We're just going to simply just put it in place and then we'll tighten it when we actually install it on the subframe. You're going to position this cut on the ball joint and this smaller bolt should screw freely. And the beauty of using Febi parts is that they come with the brand new bolts, and this is the part number. It is 34687 and this bolt goes in here. So I'll tighten this and then we'll continue with the installation of the rest of the parts. This is 18mm bolt. I want to show you how to install this drive shaft into the hub. This is quite a difficult process, and as you've seen the video previously, it was almost impossible to take out on the car from the subframe, and I used both the hydraulic press and then a ball end hammer with a big sledge, so both ways worked. I didn't damage this aluminium cast part, which is extremely expensive and hard to find. What we're going to do, we're going to clean up the splines here, which I've done previously, and then spray some penetrating fluid, WD-40 or anything similar. It should work perfectly well. And then the splines obviously on the new hub are brand new because this is a new part. So the best way I found that I can install it is by doing it in place here off the car. I'm gonna continue doing this until the threads come out on the other side, and then I'm gonna use one of the old nuts with an impact and then pull it out completely. So okay, after a couple of slams I managed to push it in through a little bit more, and now very gently, now you want to go with very low impact and try and pull it in. So that's how we install drive shaft on the hub, which is off the subframe. Let's not forget the brand new nut, which we're going to have to lock in place. I will tighten this when everything is on the car. I have purposely removed the long bolt so I can insert it now in a minute when I lined up the holes here for the diff bolts. So we've installed this one and it's already tightened. This is just gone in place. You want to install this nut here. We're just going to leave it loose, and then eventually we will tighten everything when it's bolted to the car. Let's go ahead and install the suspension arms. It's going to be much easier to install these arms, to install the ball joints first, and then to just slide this in place. So I'm going to give you some part numbers. You're obviously going to need one of these for each side. They're not sided, so you can just use this part number for both sides, 40576. Hopefully you can see this clearly. So this is the ball joint. They're both ball joint, but this is the smaller one of the two. Now let me see what way it is easier to install. So I'm just gonna install the nut. These are self-locking nuts. They're metal, they don't have the plastic bit. So the part number for the right hand side is 12582, and I'll show you the part number for the left hand side. And this is the left hand side, 12581. We're going to install the bolt this way. I'll just gently pre-tighten these nuts. I'm not going to apply any tension yet. I'm going to tighten just the ball joint nuts, because there's no adjustment there. These obviously have two bushes, so they have to be done with the curb weight of the vehicle on the ground. So They will be lightly tightened but not fully to spec, and I'm going to go over on the other side and do that as well. You want to lock this with T40. The knot is 15mm. So let's install the 21mm spanner in place, and then you're going to lock it with a 10mm. Before you install the handbrake cable, I'm going to apply a little bit of lubricant here. If we ever wanted to take this off, it will be much easier. Now we're going to push it through the back. Okay, so that's through. Let's get the little expanding part and hook it up just like that. Just in case if you're wondering why I didn't install the second spring, just because of that, because you want to install this mechanism that spreads the brake shoes apart. And now at this point we can hook up, as we did on the other side, we can hook up the spring and then install it in place with the T-shaped hook. Much easier than the other side. So that's that. Let's continue with the next step. I'm going to try and lift the top, insert it in place, and then push it in. So this is now perfectly in place. Everything else, all these spring loaded pins are in place, and then now we can safely install your brake disc, your caliper carrier, and the calipers, of course, as well, if you wanted to do that at this point. I'm going to install brand new arms. These were completely perished, and one of them was cracked, completely full of dirt and rust inside. You can see this joint. So let's install the mechanism in place. There's only one way you can install this. It has its own locking nut, which is 10mm nut. I'm installing marine grade stainless steel nuts here. A little bit of copper grease. And now let's repeat the same process on the other side. Let's proceed with the installation of the shock absorbers. We're going to install the mounts in place. In the next step, we're going to install the new shock absorbers. I've gone for Bilstein B6. These are monotube shocks, and they're an improvement, in my opinion, to the original Zax. The original, there's nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly good, but they're no longer available, and it's becoming more and more difficult to find a decent pair of shocks for these E39 estate cars. I actually found two sellers who used to sell the original Zacks, and when I purchased, then they just refund me the money and they say it's no longer available. So they just hadn't updated their stock. So I read a little bit of information on the internet, and I know going with monotube versus the original standard tubes, this is a much better shock, much higher quality than anything else that you can buy. And by the way, don't confuse with Febi Bilstein and Bilstein suspension. They're completely two different companies. A little bit of information: they started as one, but the two brothers split. One went with racing cars and specifically springs and suspension. The other Febi Bilstein brother went with manufacturing spare parts for cars, vans. Now they do trucks, all sorts of stuff. So this is why you will very rarely see any shocks in general for sale from Febi, and if you do, it's most likely going to be for commercial vehicles, not for passenger cars. That's where obviously Bilstein Group, Bilstein Suspension don't have market, and they don't obviously have conflict of interest. So a little bit of information about that. I don't want to bore you to death. So let's continue with the installation of the new shocks. I'm going to show you how I'm going to go about to install them. Very simple. Everything is going to be much easier when it's with the subframe out of the vehicle, and then we literally, all we're going to do is just connect the brake lines at the end, plug in the sensors, bolt on everything, and it should be a lot easier when we have everything in place, just ready to bolt on. So as I like to say, let's not waste any time and let's get started. So I'm going to unpack these are, by the way, these are the refurbished bolts. I've just cleaned up the rust, and I've basically treated them with Brunox and then black matte paint. So this will get damaged, but of course we can refinish that. And let's take out the shocks. Now if you wanted to look at part numbers, I can put that in the description, and I'm also going to show you here on the screen. So hopefully you can see this part number correctly. These are both the same, both sides are identical, so they're not left or right sided. Now it comes with instructions, it comes with torque spec and all the parts that you're going to need in order to fit them. So let me just open this up here. You've got the cap, which sits on top of the bush there. As I said, instructions and torque specs for these. The torque specs for the E39. This is the E39 Touring, so they've provided you with the specs for the both Touring and sedan or saloon. So the top is 70 Newton meters and the bottom is 100 Newton meters. So that's what we're gonna go with. It's gonna be a little bit difficult to compress these. I wanted to show you what I've done here. So I literally used just whatever I found in the garage. You can use whatever you have on hand. So I used a long 60 centimeter capacity a woodworking clamp, and I squeezed on the bottom and the top bolt here, and then basically push the shock in so I can insert it in the suspension arm. And hopefully I'll be able to show you this on the other side. I've done this one off camera because I wasn't sure whether it will work or not. Now what you want to do is you want to install the bolt. These are both 21 millimeters. You want to insert with the bolt head facing the rear of the vehicle, otherwise you're not going to be able to install it the other way, and then place the nut on the inside facing towards the front of the vehicle. We're not going to fully tighten this until we have the car with the full weight on the ground, but we will tighten the top. And a brand new, this is original genuine ATE, made in Germany, high performance disc. I will put the part number in the description. And just before we go any further, this has to be ideally squeaky clean. You could apply a little bit of grease here when we go to install the wheels. Very kind of ATE to put these, break these bolts in the kit. Supply you with these parts as well. I'm going to use a mallet just to set it in place. I've refurbished the calipers off camera and I completely sandblasted them. These are aluminium, so it doesn't take much to clean them up. If they were steel, it will be a different story, but thank God they're made of aluminium, or aluminum if you're American. Well, well, what an absolute beauty. It's taken me a long time to get to this point, so let's celebrate the finished product. I've buttoned up everything. I just need to tighten the two bolts at the top of the arms there, the eccentric one and the one on the bigger arm, so these will be done with the weight on the ground. So I have showed you probably 99% of the components. I don't think I mentioned the airbags. The airbags are Zax. They're the original manufacturer for the airbags on this suspension. Also the shocks were Zax, but I couldn't find them. They're out of stock. They're no longer available. I bought them from two different sellers and then they refunded me the money because they didn't have them in stock. So I went with what I believe is probably the best on the market, with Bilstein suspension. Okay, and this is just my own opinion. Everyone has their own opinion, but I just went with Bilstein B6, which is not the B4. The B4 is the stock. This is the upgraded version, so it should have slightly firmer suspension. It will probably feel a little bit better because of obviously all the components have been replaced and it's much tighter in general. But obviously after the braking in process, they say a couple of thousand miles and then everything will settle and it will feel a lot better than the initial harder ride when you first break them in. So let me take you through all the components. I'm gonna take you for a walk around the subframe and then we'll talk about most of the parts that we've installed so far. So we'll start with the most visible parts here. So the airbags, as I mentioned, they're made in the Netherlands, Zax. The Bilstein, these are made in Germany. Bilstein B6 shocks. The brake discs are high performance ATE. The ATE manufacturer is the OEM for BMW. They make, as you can see, the caliper is ATE, and these brakes are ATE as well. The discs, they're ventilated. I have a set of Zimmermann, but I went with these because they're the stock, they're the OE manufacturer, as I mentioned. The brake pads as well, they're ATE and they're slightly upgraded. They're ceramic, high content of ceramic, so it should be cleaner. The wheels should be cleaner. It says on the box low noise and low dust, so hopefully they're not going to be too squeaky. And the suspension, I've showed you detail part numbers for the suspension arms, Bosches and all that. They're made by Febi Bilstein. So yeah, I have to put new arms here on the sensor for the self-leveling suspension. They were snapped and completely full of dirt. I don't like the way they have been positioned, so they gather all the dirt. If they were positioned the other way around, probably will be much better and they won't gather as much dust. But anyway, who are we to pick on BMW? These are one of the few decent models from BMW now. Everything from, in my opinion, from 2015-16 onward is too complicated to work at home, and a lot of coding, programming, things like that. You have to go to the dealer or to BMW Germany for most things. So I like to stick with these older cars, and it gives me great pleasure to maintain them mechanically. So yeah, these oil-filled subframe Bosches are made by Febi as well. I did refurbish the Diff, as you can see. I finished it off with Brunox, and the back plate here is painted with grey paint. All the CV joints were fully re-greased, completely clean from the old grease, and new boots were installed in place. So yeah, this is the integral link here underneath. Brand new bolts, no messing about, everything is as it should. As you can see, all these bolts, like most of these suspension arms from Febi, they come with the bolts and nuts. This is the eccentric bolt here for the tracking, or the wheel alignment, as you also call it. These are the drop links. I have painted some of these parts in different colors just for a bit of contrast. I didn't want to go too crazy, but I just like a bit of contrast on the suspension. And the subframe is originally just silver aluminium, and it was really nasty. There was loads of tar from the road on it, so I power washed it, as you saw in the video, and then I sprayed it with quality chassis paint, so everything was stripped apart from the bottom arms. And yeah, I think we've done as best as we could. These caps are in place, the shocks are fully tightened, and the bottom one is not fully tightened yet, so I must apply 100 Newton meters on that bottom bolt whenever we have the car on the ground. So hopefully you're enjoying what you're seeing. And these are the gaskets here for the top of the airbags. I just gonna reuse the old ones. They're paper gaskets, they weren't damaged. I just sprayed them with black paint because they were a little bit stained, but apart from that, everything is perfect. This is it. Next step will be on the car, so we're going to connect the brake lines and the brake hoses, and wish me good luck with the rest of the work.